Marines, then a brave Navy man, who all were murdered, slaughtered, killed by terrorists. Now we've got a president, commander-in-chief, who refuses, for some reason, refuses to say we're at war with radical Islamic terrorism. Now he'll declare war on trans fats. You know, if you're afraid, if you stay up at night worried about Oreos and microwave popcorn, he's on top of that. If you ever worry at night those medieval Christians are coming to get you, he's got the Crusades. He's going to make sure we're not attacked by those Crusaders. But when it comes to radical Islamic terrorism, this president went to the Pentagon and said, we're not going to win this with guns. He said, this is a generational conflict. We have to change hearts and minds. I'm grateful that Generals Patton and Eisenhower didn't approach World War II that way. If they'd taken that as a propaganda war, the French would be speaking German today. And by the way, I am glad that in Garland, Texas, and again in Chattanooga, the law enforcement officials, they had guns when they confronted these terrorists. And by the way, they make you, if you're a terrorist, they make you think twice before you try this kind of nonsense. In Texas, in Iowa, in Louisiana, where we think gun control is hitting what you're aiming at. That's what we think. I want a commander-in-chief that will take the political handcuffs off the military. That says that we're never going to send our troops into harm's way unless we give them the support and the plan they need to win. I want our military to dominate. I don't want them to be in any fair fights. I want them to dominate those conflicts. I want a commander-in-chief who will say this. I know this is politically incorrect. I want him to say Islam has a problem. That problem is called radical Islam. The president needs to say to Islamic clerics and leaders, it's not enough to condemn generic acts of violence. You have to condemn the murderers by name. Say to these individuals, you are not martyrs who are going to enjoy a reward in the afterlife, but rather you're going straight to hell where you belong. We also need a president who will say to Muslim leaders, if you want these same freedoms, you need to explicitly embrace these same freedoms for other people with different religious beliefs than your own. And by the way, he keeps talking about having the power of the pen and the phone. Right now, today, he should put an end to these gun-free zones at our military facilities. I signed an executive order last night authorizing Louisiana's National Guard to be armed at these recruiting facilities, these other installations. First of all, I'm a believer in the Second Amendment, but secondly, these are trained men and women. We trust them to defend us. This is like sending a fireman out without a hose. Why in the world would we leave them defenseless against these terrorists? We need to get over the political correctness. There is evil in this world. We're at war with this evil. This president started by saying Al-Qaeda was gone. Then he said that ISIS was the JV team. Then he said he had no strategy to defeat them. Now he's saying it's a generational conflict. We can defeat, and we will defeat, this evil enemy. But we need a commander-in-chief with the moral clarity and honesty. To be honest with the American people, to be honest with our allies, to be honest with our enemies. These terrorists need to know we're going to hunt them down and kill them. Not contain them, not degrade them, not change. How do you change the hearts and minds of rapists, of murderers, who are out there beheading and torturing Christians and other religious minorities? We can and will win this conflict. But it is time for us as conservatives, as Americans, it's time for us to fight to get our country back on the right path. This election is not about the Republican Party. It's not even about the state of Iowa or the state of Louisiana. It's about the United States of America. Amen. I'm here to tell you, as your commander-in-chief, I will get 4 things done. We will repeal and replace every single word of Obamacare and get it off the board. And I'm the only candidate with a plan to do that. Secondly, we'll stop talking about it. We're not going to pass a comprehensive bill. We're not going to grant amnesty. We are going to secure the border once and for all. The only thing a 1,000-page bill is good for is to put next to the wall at the border. That's the only reason we get 1,000 pages. The third thing we're going to do is we're going to shrink the size of the federal government, grow the private sector economy, so our children and grandchildren can join the middle class and pursue the American dream. And fourthly and finally, we're going to stop the hollowing out of our military. We're going to reinvest in our military so our friends trust us, our enemies fear us. We will stand with Israel. We will stop Iran from becoming a nuclear power. I'm going to close with this. I'm asking people to join a cause as much as I'm asking you to join a campaign. I'm asking you to believe again. When I was young, my dad taught me that Americans could do anything. I believed him then, and I believe him now. And I think you believe that too. But I think you've been frustrated. For 7 long years, we've been frustrated. We do want to believe again. I think America's best days are still ahead of us. I think we can dominate this century. But it's not inevitable. Ronald Reagan reminded us we were that shining city on a hill. He told us every generation has to choose for itself to renew those principles of freedom. He said it wasn't inevitable. Previous generations have sacrificed great blood and treasure to give us the opportunity to live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Now it is our time to choose. You know, Winston Churchill, he used to say this about the American people. He said, you can trust the Americans to do the right thing after they've exhausted every alternative. Folks, we've exhausted, after 7 years of President Obama, we have exhausted every alternative. It is time to do the right thing. I'm asking folks to believe again. I'm asking folks to go to bobbyjindal.com to learn more. We've got to win this election. It's not optional that we defeat Hillary. And it's not for us. It is for our children and our grandchildren. So they can have the same right we did to grow up in the greatest country in the history of the world. God bless y'all. Thank y'all so much for coming out on the I'd like to hear from you. I'd like to hear y'all's questions. It can be on anything and everything. It doesn't have to be on anything we've talked about. Yes, ma'am. Sure. The question was how I came to my Christian faith. Well, it was a very short conversion experience. It only took 7 years. And so I always joke about that. I didn't have that sudden, Paul described that overnight sudden conversion experience. It was a little tougher for me. I'll tell you briefly. So growing up, I'd always believed in God, but I had a very transactional relationship with God. And what I mean by that, it was like God was Santa Claus. I'd pray, but it was, God, if you do good things for me, I'll behave. It was like, and every night I would break my promise. Every morning I'd break my promise. Every night I'd make a new one. If you're a sports fan, you know what I'm talking about. Like us, those of us that are big football fans, dear God, just give me one more touchdown. That's all my team needs. I won't ask for anything else. My best friend in the world gave me a Bible. My best friend in the world told me he was going to miss me when I didn't go to heaven. Now, I will recommend you leave here today, go tell your neighbors. Governor Jindal came and talked to us. I want to tell you, good people, we're going to miss you guys. Go to heaven. I mean, who talks like that? Your neighbors will think you're crazy. I thought my best friend was crazy, but he planted seeds of the gospel. When he gave me that Bible, I didn't want it. I'll be honest with you. It was a Christmas present. The one thing he was smart enough to do is he put my name on the front cover. I would have re-gifted it if he hadn't. I said, why do you buy a Bible? You get them for free in hotel rooms. Why would you spend good money buying one of these things? My grandfather died, and for the first time, he had a massive stroke. I didn't get a chance to say goodbye to him. It hit me hard. As a child, I never thought about death or getting old. He was somebody I really looked up to and I loved, and it made me wonder what happens after you die. Does heaven really exist? If it exists, how do you get there? I started reading that Bible, but it wasn't that easy. I didn't have a 750. I didn't really understand what I was reading. I was praying. I prayed to God. I said, God, tell me if you exist. If you exist, tell me how to worship you. And so, through a lot of different people who planted those seeds, eventually my best friend, the one that had given me that Bible, he invited me to come listen to him sing in his church. So I went to this chapel on the campus at LSU. In the middle of the music, they played a little black and white film. And they showed Jesus on the cross. know why, after all those years, but God hit me harder than I've ever been hit before. It just hit me. If that's really the Son of God, and if He died for me, and I don't mean He died for billions of people. I mean, He died for Bobby Jindal. That's how personal it was. If He's up there because of my sins, what I've done, what I've failed to do, then how arrogant for me to do anything but get on my knees and worship Him. Youth pastor came out and said, if you've not accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, we want to get to know you better. So I filled out one of those cards, and I started meeting with him, and we started praying together. We started reading Scripture together over the weeks, and the words jumped off the page. It was like the Bible was written just for me. From 2,000 years ago, it was like Jesus was talking to me in the Gospels in the New Testament. And I tell you, one of the reasons I'm so eager to share with folks what happened to me is, as Christians, I believe we are called to be salt and light in this world. You know, we're not always called to reap. We are called to sow. It took 7 long years, and there were people that gave up on me. And yet, I wouldn't be here standing before you today as a Christian if they hadn't had that persistence and they just had that faith. And a lot of them don't even realize what they did. A pastor described to me, and I don't know if this is theologically accurate or not, but I love this description so beautifully. He said, when we go to heaven, we go to the Father's kingdom, he said, we're going to be greeted by all these people whose lives we impacted. And he said, we're probably not going to recognize most of them. Well, then why is that person greeting me? What did I do? I didn't even know that person. I didn't meet that person. Who is this person? And that's such a beautiful image. Like I said, I'm no pastor, but it sounds like a wonderful way to be received up there. And I know that there are people in my life. So I would encourage us all to recommit ourselves to planting those seeds. Look, the ground may be rocky. You may think you didn't have an impact. You may get frustrated. But years later, it may be like a guy like me wakes up and says, oh, now I get it. I'll tell you real quickly, the interesting thing in my case. So Billy Graham came and preached a crusade in Louisiana in the early 70s. Back then, they were filling up football stadiums. The guy that came in ahead of him, the guy that came for Billy Graham, came to set up, the logistics, out all the pastors and everybody involved. He felt called after the crusade to stay in Baton Rouge. He felt called to plant a church. He became the founding pastor of Chapel on the campus, on the LSU campus, non-denominational church. Who would have predicted, fast forward into the 80s, when I was 16 years old, I was that teenager that accepted Christ in that church. And then you fast forward 27 and a half years later. As governor of that same state, I was able to call something called the response in the basketball arena on that same campus, calling us together to pray for a spiritual revival in our country, in our state, in our country. And the thing that's so amazing to me is there's no way any human being could have predicted when Billy Graham came there at about the time I was born that would lead to a church being planted, that would lead to me accepting Christ, that would lead me calling this Christian prayer. And that, who knows what seeds got planted in January at that basketball arena. There may be people years from now walking around whose spiritual lives are impacted, and we have no way of knowing. I know it's easy to get discouraged when you look around what's going on in our country. The culture is more and more coarse. We're going broke at home and overseas. But I want to remind people, look, the tomb is empty. It's kind of like God's given us the book of life. We don't know what happened on this page or the next page, but on the last page, God wins. We worship an all-powerful God. And one of the things that attracted me to Christians and Christianity was seeing the joy, the fulfillment, the sense of love and purpose. I didn't know what it was. I knew I wanted it. I later realized it was the Holy Spirit. And I know that this isn't a spiritual revival. I know that we came here, we'll talk politics and policy as well, but church is tomorrow, not today. But and don't worry, there's no collection plate if you're getting nervous about it. But I do think as Christians, one of the things we should be is of good cheer. If we walk around moping around going, woe is us, if we're walking around depressed, who wants to join that group? Well, if our God's almighty, why do we walk around so unsure? And I'm not saying just because we believe everything's going to work out. I'm not saying your football team always wins, or you always get the promotion, or your kids never get sick, or you win every single election. But the most important thing does end up happening. He beats death. He beats Satan. I tell people it's like watching a football game. You already know the end score. Makes it a lot easier. Now, your team may be down by 50 points at halftime, and your quarterback may be fumbling. We use a lot of sports analogies in Louisiana, the South. That's what we do. But the good news is we don't really win. All right, other question. Now, they don't all have to be that serious. You can ask other questions. Yes, sir.
My concern is basically putting our image, the United States image, in a higher stance. We've seen President Obama bow to other chiefs of countries, and our military needs to be stronger. I think Reagan said it best, strength, or peace through strength. I can verify, people were afraid of America back in the reign of the president. And they're not. What is your plan for that?
First of all, I think you're exactly right. I think this is the first president in my lifetime that does not believe in American exceptionalism. Think how shocking that is. You know, in 2012, I used to go around campaigning against his second term, saying he was the worst president since Jimmy Carter. After the election, I went to D.C. and I apologized to the president. I thought that was disrespectful to Jimmy Carter for me to have said that. I mean, Jimmy Carter believed in American exceptionalism. He was incompetent, but at least he believed in American exceptionalism. You're exactly right. This president, not only does he go around criticizing America and apologizing in our name, he does it here at home. When they asked him if he believed in American exceptionalism, he gave this wishy-washy answer years ago, saying, well, the Greeks believe in theirs, the Brits believe. What kind of answer is that? If you want to be commander-in-chief, president of the United States, why wouldn't you stand up and say, of course this is the greatest country in the history of the world? And we serve as an example to others and a light of hope, of freedom. And so you're exactly right. We've got to rebuild our military. I want to cut the federal budget. I want to balance the budget. I want to shrink the size of government. But we need to invest in our military. We're going to have fewer troops than any time before World War II. We're going to have fewer and older planes and ships at a time where China's investing in a Blue Water Navy. Russia's investing in a modernized nuclear arsenal. Putin is already in the Ukraine, in eastern Ukraine, and Crimea. Peace through strength works. Weakness is provocative to evil. Reagan deployed troops less frequently than the presidents before him and after him. Here's the ironic thing. By withdrawing from the world and trying to leave from behind, we're actually encouraging our enemies. There was a time when Israel and our allies could trust America. Now they're confused. Now you've got the Saudis, you've got the Sunni countries, you've got Israel, you've got other countries looking at China, looking at Russia, looking to hedge their bets, wondering what's going to happen if America's not willing to leave. So you're exact. We've done the opposite. It's even worse. It's not just our foreign policy is not just this random, misguided adventure. Instead, we're actually encouraging dictators. We're rewarding the Castro brothers in Cuba. We're rewarding Iran. This president's an easy mark for every dictator in the world. They're all looking around going, well, we can out-negotiate him. We can get whatever we want out of him. Appeasement, it doesn't work. This idea we're going to make our enemies like us, it doesn't work. So you're exactly right. We need a commander-in-chief. But it starts with this core belief. It's not just bad policy. I used to think it was just it's not incompetence. It's also ideology. If you don't believe America is the greatest country, we need to be teaching American exceptionalism in our schools and our history and our civics classes again. One of the reasons, I've said I'm against Common Core for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons, I don't want the feds making curriculum decisions. Right now it's math and ELA. Can you imagine if this president were defining American history? It'd all be about victimhood. He is. No, you're right. He is trying to rewrite that notion. It'd all be about the mistakes and how America had fallen short. It's amazing to me to have an American president who doesn't believe in American exceptionalism. No wonder our stings and all. If we don't believe in ourselves, how can we expect other people to believe in us? But I still believe. I think you believe. I know my parents believe. I want my kids. Here's my fear. You and I remember what we want to get back to. 4 more years, there's a whole generation who'll have no idea what we're talking about. They'll say, oh yeah, I kind of remember reading that in a history book. Yeah, that's right. Look, if you want somebody to manage the slow decline of this country, I'm not your candidate. If you're looking for somebody who's going to go to D.C. and upset the apple cart and make the big changes, that's what I'm asking people to do. Because you're right, the path we're on, you want to see our future, look to Europe. It's a steady decline. It's a culture where we take God out of the public square. It's where we no longer have dynamic private sector growth. It's where more and more people are dependent on the government. That's not the future I want for my children. So I agree. And it starts with having a president who actually believes in America, and then secondly, rebuild our military. A feared military actually has to be deployed less frequently than a weaker military, ironically enough. Yes, sir. Well, the question about the Federal Reserve. So look, the president, good news. The president this week announces to the world that good news, the annual deficit will be a little under $500 billion. Don't you feel better? What he doesn't tell you is that, first of all, that doesn't include the UALs from Social Security, Medicare, and it doesn't include all the funny money games where they take money in one account and use it to hide the shortfalls in others. But secondly, he doesn't tell you that if we had real normal interest rates and a normal currency where it normally would be, that deficit would be a lot higher. Look, the path we're on is not sustainable. This idea that we're going to have, we've had near zero interest rates for several years now. We've had a Fed that feels free just to print money. And so when they ran out of stimulus options in Congress, the White House, then the Fed decided they could get in this job of quantitative easing. When Congress asked for more oversight, more predictability, they balked. I think we do need to audit the Fed. I do think we need more transparency and predictability. I also think we need a stronger currency. And I think we need a more predictable currency. And I think that we can't have artificially low interest rates forever. When you think about it, all we're doing is we're going to create the next speculation bubble. It's almost like we're going to have a party today and pay the bills tomorrow. Well, you can't keep doing that. I mean, the difference between us and Greece was that we could keep printing money when they couldn't. But you can't do that forever. And so I think that it's long past due for time to not only audit the Fed, but to have more transparency, more predictability, and to have sound money again. And it's been too long since we've had that. And that's not just under President Obama. That's been something that's been a problem it's been building for some time. He's just done it a lot worse than his predecessors. Yes, ma'am.
What sets you apart from other Republican candidates? We can all agree Hillary's bad, but
Right.
other Republican candidates, and also would your kids be excited about living in the White House?
Two great questions. First of all, what sets me apart from other Republicans? So two things. One, I've talked a little bit about this, but I think you need a doer, not a talker. Everybody's going to say all kinds of great things. The reality is nobody's cut as much government spending as we have anyway. 8 credit upgrades, 26%. Our budget is $9 billion smaller than when we started. I don't mean we cut the growth rate. I mean it is smaller. I mean today versus the day I took office, there are 30,000 fewer people working for the state government of Louisiana because we measure success in the private sector. And the reason I tell you that is in D.C., let's say that an agency has $100 today and they want $110 tomorrow. Republicans give them $105 and say, look, we cut the budget. That's not a cut. We're just growing it less quickly than the Democrats want to grow it. So the